crafty friends, it's Jess from jesscrafts.com, and today I'm here with April's Lawn Fawn Lovers collaboration. This is a video hop created by fans of Lawn Fawn. It has no affiliation with Lawn Fawn and is not in any way sponsored by it. Just a couple of YouTubers who like to work with Lawn Fawn who got together to do a little collaboration. And so I've been participating in it for a few months. As always, we had a theme, which was an interactive card, and I will be leaving you links in the video description below to the others who are participating so you can see other interactive cards using Lawn Fawn from some other great video creators. So to get started with my card, I have a piece of watercolor paper here, and I'm working with Distress Stain. I have Salty Ocean, Peacock Feathers, and Evergreen Bough. Colors don't matter that much. I just recommend whatever blues and bluish greens that you have, although I'm a huge fan of peacock feathers personally. And I like how the mix of the blues and greens tend to create a really simple, easy to make ocean scene. And there's no real technique to this technique. You just kind of swipe them across in a bit of a wave pattern. You can swipe them all the way across. You can end it part way. You do want to try to create a bit of a blending. So I started with Salty Ocean, went to Peacock Feathers, filled it in with Evergreen Bough. Evergreen Bough is actually a pretty light color. But then it got a little too green, so I put in some more Salty Ocean. You can layer them up pretty nicely. They are translucent, but if you hit them with a heat gun in between, they do layer on top of each other, and you can add a bit more of a darkness or a blue back in there. Now, once I had that, I do like to add a bit of shimmer and sparkle to my ocean scenes. So for this one, I chose to use the antique bronze. In retrospect, I might have preferred the silver because there's a couple other things along the line that, when I was creating that I probably would have preferred to use silver because of the supplies I had. But, I picked it and I rolled with it. So I just kind of swiped the antiques bronze. It did come off pretty dark and heavy that was a little bit more noticeable, so I kind of tried to tone it down by coming again with the Salty Ocean. So just keep layering it up till you get the look that you like. It's a fun technique because there is no, like I said, hard technique to it, and there is no right answer. There is no right amount of anything. I do, of course, recommend a little bit less. You wouldn't want to cover the whole thing because with the metallic, because the metallics are a bit more opaque. So then I have the Lift the Flap dies from Lawn Fawn, and that's going to be one way that my card is interactive because you can lift up the flaps, but it's also going to be a shaker. So what I'm doing here is applying some ATG all around the flaps so that I can put a piece of acetate down behind this and create all of my shaker windows. I want to be really generous with the adhesive, and I want to use a really strong adhesive so that I don't have any elements falling out later. Taking a piece of acetate almost the same size as this and covering the back. I am using a 4 by 5¼ piece of watercolor paper here. I would recommend maybe a little bit heavier of a watercolor paper if you felt like you're going to do a lot of distress stain or a heavy cardstock. I don't think you need watercolor paper for this technique. I think you just need a thick cardstock. And you might find, though, that if you do go with a cardstock instead of a watercolor paper, that you get a little bit difference in your blending. So I have a bunch of images from Lawn Fawn already pre-colored. I've done a video in the past with these particular critters and with this stamp set, and I've shared coloring with this stamp set in the past, but sometimes I just like to color to relax, and so I have a lot of pre-colored images, and I was using this as a way of I wanted to, when creating this card, just use up a bunch of images that I had. So I took a bunch of underwater and sea sets from Lawn Fawn that I had pre-colored. I pulled out all the little baggies of the stamped colored cut images, and I'm just going to start trying to arrange a bit of a scene. At this point, I thought I'd probably want to make a happy birthday card for someone and send this directly to them. It is going to require a little bit thicker of an envelope, but that's also going to allow me to use sequins without any worries. Sometimes when I donate my cards, they do suggest not using sequins, as small parts could be a choking hazard. So I don't use sequins as much as I might otherwise like to. once I have my scene arranged, I also think that it's fun to make like there's things behind the flap. But I recommend that those things go on top of your acetate. So here I am tucking a starfish inside of each lift the flap window, but it is going on top of the acetate. The reason for this is one, much easier to adhere because I can just put glue on the back. The glue will go through the acetate and you won't have to worry about seeing it. But also, if you were to attach it behind the acetate, it's something that the sequins could catch on and they won't shake around as much because they'll get stuck to the adhesive behind it. So I recommend gluing everything down ahead of time onto the top of the acetate as opposed to underneath it. And ahead of time might have been a little bit easier, but it is what it is. Next up, I made another mistake. And I mean, not that the other was a big mistake, but anyway, here I made another background because when you look through the shaker windows, I want you to see a similar but not exactly the same background. And I wanted to have the happy birthday sentiment, but it wasn't really showing up very vibrant. So I decided that I would heat emboss it. However, I forgot to take my embossing buddy. And so the embossing powder stuck everywhere. It was all over the distress ink. And I was like, is this ruined? I thought, well, why don't I heat emboss it? Because worst case scenario, I don't like it and it's not any more ruined than it already was. But the clear embossing powder all over the background just became like shiny little bubbles essentially. And it was really hard to see on camera, but it basically just made my background look wet, which was perfect because it's water. So I just kept it, and it's going to only be through the shaker windows. If it was the front of the card, maybe not quite the look I was going for. But since it's just through the shaker windows, I made it work. And so if you think your project is ruined, I would suggest take a little more time, try to fix it, see how it goes, because you were going to throw it out anyway. So you may as well spend a bit more time and see if you can recover it with some fun ideas. Next up, I added my double layer of foam tape all around the windows. I did keep the two smaller lift the flap windows together in their little foam pocket. And then I'm going to add a bunch of sequins from Cat Scrappiness. I'm not going to add just any one sequin mix because I didn't have the perfect colors. But what's nice is when you have sequin mixes, you can make your own mixes from your mixes, pull a little bit each. So I took some turquoise from the Breakfast at Tiffany's, and I took a lot of the solid confetti dots, which look kind of pink there, and the blue steel, I picked a few blue out of there. So I just kind of made it work, used what I have. I was pretty generous in my fill. I did forget that the happy birthday should be tried to be centered on that window, and so I just sort of stuck it down. I got super lucky that I didn't stick it upside down, which would have been much bigger of a problem. And it does a little bit off center, but I think it looks pretty cute anyway. And that's basically it for my card. I'm just going to glue that to a card base. And that is my Lawn Fawn interactive card for the month of April. As mentioned, this is part of a video hop, so I will leave you links below to the other participants in the hop, as well as to some of the products that I used. And I'll try to maybe leave some links to other videos featuring this stamp set, especially if I colored it, so that you could get some more information on that. Thank you so much for spending this time with me today. I hope you had fun checking out this interactive shaker card featuring Lawn Fawn. Have a great day. Bye.